What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be covering over the three main decks that I used to reach max rank in Conquest. For those that don't know, I did hit it day one yesterday, and I used three main decks that I had super success for. And this video is not going to be basically covering gameplay, but more me talking about the three decks. I'm going to try to do my best to not talk about cards that you can swap in and out. I'm just gonna give you what I used. If you have these cards, great. If you don't, try to build what you can out of them, because it is a pretty flexible build. Going into the first deck, I'm gonna just go over really quick the game plan and the premise and what you can do with it, and then we're gonna talk about the other two after. If you guys can, please give me a like and subscribe. It'd mean a lot, as I work very hard on these videos. Okay, so in the first game, in the first basic premise, you have Kitty Pryde, and Quinjet, and Collector. The whole premise of this is that you basically start playing cards on one, like Kitty Pryde on two. You can do a Kitty Pryde and Collector. Sometimes you want to watch out for those Killmongers, because they're going to snipe you on turn 3 if they see you playing the Kitty Pryde. So just be aware. The premise of this deck, though, is that you have Quinjet, Agent Coulson, and Nick Fury. They are going to offer you so much variety. Basically, they kind of work like a side deck as you play in competitive. They give you lots of surprise, and it's going to constantly keep your opponent guessing. It's really helpful, and even though Dino is in this deck, you actually find that you don't play him as often. The point of having Lady Sif and Ghost Rider is actually to pocket a really strong card like Dino or Nick Fury, in hopes of basically so that people don't spider ham you. It's really helpful to do these things, because when you have things like Quinjet on the field and Zabu, it makes cards like Ghost Rider, Shang-Chi more playable. It also makes cards that Nick Fury and Agent Coulson give you cheaper. The whole premise of the deck is pretty simple. As you're building up with Kitty Pryde, you're going to have a lot of options, just because when you have Quinjet, it makes a 6 cost a 5 cost, and you're able to sometimes play, a 6 cost on turn 5 and then a 6 cost on turn 6 alongside a really big built Kitty Pryde. This deck is super helpful. It's so that the skill ceiling for this in competitive is super top notch, just because you're able to reach out of bounds with other cards that you don't typically have. It's really great. Cable's also really good, because he's just going to be able to pull into your opponent's deck, yank something out, and then you can basically pull one of their tools that it could be really good to, for them against you. This deck pulls a lot of options. You have the Lady Sif and Ghost Rider, like I said earlier. This is really good for you, because you're able to Lady Sif on either turn 6 into a 3 cost Ghost Rider with Zabu, and you can play a big card and spread your power out across the board. At the same time, like I said, you can do a Ghost Rider into Shang-Chi, cutting out one of your 6 costs or your double Dino, and then Shang-Chi in one of their big cards. It's really flexible, and I really had so much fun playing this deck. And we got a bunch of Infinity tickets alone just with this deck. We actually got a gold ticket just alone with this deck within 20 minutes. Going into the next deck, now that we're going into the more heavier competitive decks, that was one that I built myself. One of the other decks that I used was a Rude Ramp. I got this one off of a guy from Discord. He got an Infinity Border within like the first, I think like first hour of it coming out. And this is the Rude Ramp. This deck was really good. And I have to say, it is a little bit of an older deck, but it is super flexible. It's pretty much nothing but Series 3 cards with Spider-Ham. If you don't have Spider-Ham, it's totally not, it's okay. Everyone pretty much has this card right now, and I would hyper recommend getting it. If you don't have Spider-Ham, I would just say maybe you can either do Sunspot, or you can do I would say Iceman. With the basic premise of this deck, you're going to be basically playing Nebula, as soon as you can. On turn 3, you're gonna try to aim for Electro or Wave. If you don't pull the Wave, pretty much you want to try to aim to get your Sandman out as soon as possible. This deck has tons of combos, and we use this in the much later. I would say we use this for games We used this for games 2 and 3 out of the 5 on my Infinity Conquest. Games 2 and 3, this is where this deck came into play. I used my Devil Dino for my first match. And yeah. So the whole premise is that you put Sandman out. You're going to put cards in there like Black Panther. If you're winning 2 lanes, you can do Arrow in 1 lane. You can do Odin on Arrow, keeping them completely off of the 2 lanes that you're winning. You can do, you know, cards like Leader while you're playing Sandman. This deck just provides you to get into multiple lanes when there's only allowed to play 1 lane as possible. Basically, it intertwines with Sandman super good. It allows you to dip into the 6 costs around turn 5. It allows you to dip into your Black Panther turn 3. There's a lot of options. One of the other cool things that you can want to do is maybe want to turn, if you don't have the Sandman, wave on turn 5, puts your opponent in a really bad situation. And like I said before, you know, if you're winning 2 lanes, you can Arrow. If you're winning, you know, 1 lane, you can Arm and Zola. You know, you can Leader, and then you can Odin on Leader. There's just a lot of flexibility, and you really can't go wrong with this deck. I do believe Binks also used a very similar deck like this in Conquest, and this is what he used. Unintentionally, I saw his video today, but this is what I used 2 days ago. So with that being said, I do believe I hit Infinite before he did. But yeah. So this deck, really great, amazing, and yeah. Going into the next and the last deck. This is the deck that we took to the last 2 games, and I had my friend coach me playing it. I don't play Evo, but this in its own was really good. This deck was the High Evolutionary deck, and I know, you know, if you don't want to run it, that's fine. I will say you will have a hard time if you don't, to be honest. It's just a really good deck. I would say it's probably top tier next to the Ramp Up deck. Right now, this deck is just really solid. Bounce decks are really good too, but this counters bounce decks really, really successfully. And the reason that is because of Wave. The basic premise for this deck is you actually want to be skipping like pretty much turns 1 and sometimes 2. It's a really weird thought process. Even if you have Sunspot and Nebula in your hand, sometimes skipping turn 1 isn't a bad idea. You want to basically see what they're playing sometimes, and that's a really good tip that I can give you. Watch what your opponents are doing, and, you know, do what you can to try to avoid, you know, or play around what they're doing. This deck is just strong because you're going to want to do certain things, and you're always going to want to leave at least 1 energy. So this kind of deck is weird. You want to be playing your like 3 costs on 4, your 1 costs on 2, so that you always have that extra energy and building up that Hulk throughout the entire game. As long as you're doing that, this deck is going to provide itself a lot of health. It's very, very good. If you can do certain things like play Misty Knight on turn 1 or 2, that's okay. You know, get Storm down if you can, Juggernaut the Storm lane and secure it. If you don't want to do that, you can save Juggernaut for last turn. You can do things like Cyclops on 1 lane and just completely decrease their value, and it's going to help Sunspot and Nebula consistently build themselves. Try to spread it out if you can too. You have things like Jeff to fit in lanes, you know, like Storm if you need it. He's just really good and flexible, especially against people that want to play Professor X. And then basically turns, I would say 5, this is where it comes down. You always want to play your Wasp before you play your Wave. Play your Wave and Wasp usually in the same turn if you haven't already. You can do things like Dr. Doom. You can spread yourself out. He's still a really good card. And then the whole, like I said, the premise of this is that you're going to just be decreasing their value. And when you wave on turn 4, you're still having 2 energy left over, even if you're playing your Hulk, giving cards like Cyclops, you know, Misty Knight, you know, Sunspot, still increasing their values. So this deck is really good. I would say it was probably just overall, I had trouble playing against these things. And yeah, with that being said, guys, that was the end of that. These are the 3 decks that I mainly use. I'm going to leave the deck codes in my description. I will try to be getting more Conquest games out as soon as I can. And yeah, but for the most part, we're going to be chilling, having fun, and we're going to be experimenting with more Spider-Man 2099 in the upcoming days. So with that being said, guys, please subscribe, follow, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.